Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Visalia Unified School District Superintendent, Dr. Tamara Ravaline. Today, we are going to be moderating a question and answer session based on questions that were submitted to our district on Monday by parents, students, and community members using our Google online form. Again, I appreciate those of you who took the time to provide comments and ask questions on our Google form. We'll be answering questions and adding some other information that we were not able to cover last week. First, I want to once again review our staggered approach to reopening schools, and we are using a staggered approach, opening slowly in phases to ensure the safety of our students and our staff members. We certainly want all of our students back in school, but we want to make sure that we do so in a safe and effective manner so that we don't open up and then inadvertently have to close again. This week we have started our pilots for special education services. Those might include occupational therapy, physical therapy, or speech therapy, and other such services that are related on the individual education plan. We're doing that with our 3 pilots so that we can open up all of our schools next week for services. 2 weeks ago we started with our assessments, and again we started with pilots, and now all of our schools are able to offer assessments at the school site. We're also working on opening up our cohorts by mid-October. Cohorts will start with homeless and foster youth, and then we'll move on to students with disabilities and English learners. The timing of all this is interesting because at the same time we're working on opening up cohorts, and those would be in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. We're also working on our elementary school waiver. We'll be bringing that to our next board meeting for approval. And these last couple weeks, we've been working with our labor partners to review the elementary school waiver and get their input as well. So that's kind of where we are on opening up our schools. We've also been opening up, starting tomorrow, if the air quality holds out, we'll be opening up our sites for athletic conditioning. We're also working with other groups to open up activities in small cohorts as we can. Again, we're choosing to do a staggered and slow approach so that we make sure that we are careful. We don't want to take any unnecessary risks with the health and safety of our students or our staff and families. So today, I have asked again Susie Skaden, our Director of Health Services, to join us to answer some questions regarding athletic conditioning. And Susie, can you please explain the protocols we're using for athletic conditioning? I'm sorry, I think you need your mic on, ma'am.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Dr. Ravaline. We'll be following local health official recommendations and the California Department of Public Health guidelines for youth sports. Under specific circumstances, the school district is allowed to have sport conditioning. Number 1, we have to maintain the 6 feet social distancing during the activity. Number 2, it has to be a stable cohort or group with a limit of 16 participants, including the coach in that count. And number 3, all activities will be outdoors, as Tulare County is in the purple tier, and we can't use the indoor gyms at this time. Sports that will begin conditioning will be those identified by CIF, and those are considered the fall season sports. And competitions may start as early as January, so we want our teams to be safe and our students to be conditioned prior to taking part in that sport. Conditioning is meant to focus on the individual skill building, such as running drills, lifting weights, and that type of thing, to increase their strength and endurance. Our athletic directors at each high school have worked to establish schedules so it accommodates social distancing guidelines. They've made set groups of the sports to have identified locations on campus so they're not mixing with other cohorts, and there's a limited amount of contact with anyone else during the time that they're on campus. Our locker rooms are not going to be open, so students must come prepared for the activity in whatever gear they need to be wearing. They will be expected to leave as soon as they're finished because we don't want students loitering and, having contact with each other. And we also are having a pre-participation COVID screening for each student that comes to participate in conditioning. Student athletes that have any identified symptoms of COVID will not be allowed to participate, and then will have to wait and visit their doctor, get a recommendation when they could return to the activity. In addition to our pre-COVID check and making sure we have our cohorts, we do have another issue not related to COVID, and that's our poor air quality. And students may want to be there and we have everything set to go, but if our air quality conditions are not such that are safe for them to be outdoors, we will have to follow the air advisory and perhaps not have outdoor conditioning certain days.
So usually a couple hours before practice would begin, we'd make the call as if the air quality is safe enough for outdoor practice. Is that the protocols we're continuing?
Yes, we've done that in years past, and we will continue to do that. There's a chart guidance that we follow. If the air quality is a certain level, then we do not have students outside. There's even an app you can put on your phone to follow along and see what the air condition is like during the time of practice.
And I would suspect with the fires going on and the harvesting right now of a lot of crops that kick up dust, our air quality is somewhat diminished from what it normally might be this time of year?
Yes, it's not great air quality right now. We've received several notifications of poor air quality conditions, and we follow that guideline, and it's read every hour. So we have hourly guidelines that we will check and make sure it's safe. In addition to what the guidelines say, though, it might be unsafe if you smell smoke or see ash falling, then no matter what the air quality reading is, you would stop the activity outdoors.
Thank you. I also understand that while we're having conditioning going on, our athletic trainers, they will be available on site in case there's any medical issues to deal with, training, strained muscles and such. And our athletic directors will also be available. So it's not just the coaches that will be out with the cohorts.
Correct.
And what are the athletic directors and athletic trainers? I know you've been in many discussions with them. What are they going to be doing while these cohorts are practicing?
They will be monitoring to make sure that the guidelines are being adhered to, that there is the social distancing taking place, and the pre-COVID checks are happening, just to make sure we're following the guidance, because we don't want to start and then have to stop because somebody gets sick.
Okay, and I did receive a question about the pools, and I know that our district has determined that we're going to keep pools closed at this time. Can you give us a little background on your conversations with local health officials and the planning that's going into reopening the pools, what that might look like?
Sure. As with other actions in Visalia Unified, our goal is to keep our kids healthy and to go slow for their protection. We are starting out with the conditioning, so for swimmers, dry land conditioning will be fine, and then we want to progress and gradually add in things such as pool use. We're following the California tier system for reopening, and right now it says outdoor pools may be open with modifications. And so our local health officials want to make sure that those modifications are maintaining social distancing, that we have a plan in place to make sure in the water, on the deck, when you're in the pool area, that we are adhering to the social distancing guidelines.
So even in the pool, the student athletes would have to maintain 6 feet away from each other, couldn't share equipment, sort of the same rules and protocols that we have on dry land.
Correct, and we've asked our athletic directors to please map out their plan, how they would provide that social distancing and safety measures with the pool use.
And I understand that we also have some drumline, flag-type activities that may start in a few weeks as far as getting ready for online performances and such with the marching band, maybe the auxiliary pieces of it. You're working with those groups, I understand, as well?
Yes, they're developing plans too, where they will be the same as athletics. They have their practice sessions and maintaining social distancing, wearing masks, doing pre-participation checks, everything in place
And
in the same
staying with
manner.
the cohorts of 16?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share with us about all the protocols that we've been developing? I know it's been a lot.
As we go along, we want to make sure that everybody's safe and doing the same thing throughout the district so that we're all keeping students safe.
All right, well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us again. I'm sure we'll continue to probably have health questions, as that is the reason that we're closed.
Right.
So thank you. We did have questions that were similar to last week on options for when elementary schools might return to school. Again, we're going to be taking the elementary school waiver to the next board meeting. That's October 13th, so we'll be bringing that forward. The public will have time to comment. Most likely, we'll continue the AB model. It might look a little bit different. We're meeting with groups of teachers to discuss that. And again, the reason we would have perhaps an AM and a PM group is that we have to maintain that social distancing, and so we can't fit all of the students at one time into the classrooms. Currently, though, we are also planning, we understand that some families will not want to send their children for health reasons back to the school, so we will have distance learning options as well. And depending on the numbers of students at each grade level and each school, they may be able to stay with teachers at their school site, or we may have to reassign staff to cover. So we're preparing a survey to send home to parents, and we'll have more information on what that might look like once the parents let us know what their children are going to be doing when we are allowed to return to school. We're also, again, continuing to work on scheduling options for middle schools and high schools, and we will definitely ask students and families how they feel about making changes at this time before we move forward. So I've also got some questions about GPAs, keeping grades up, and what's that like. So I've asked Brandon Gridiron, our Administrator of Equity and Student Services, to join me again this week. Thank you, Brandon, to talk about academic progress. So Brandon, we know, in talking to other school districts up and down the state, that some of our students are struggling. That's happening. That's not germane to Visalia Unified, but it is happening here as well. Some students are struggling to keep their grades up. And you as a parent, you have 3 school-aged children, so you kind of know that from the parent aspect as well on a first-hand basis. Can you share some of the strategies that students and parents can use to address this issue?
So as expected, the transition from full-time distance learning or full-time instruction, in-person learning, to full-time distance learning has been a challenge for some of our students, and managing the between asynchronous and synchronous work and the workload and the time management has been a challenge. And it's really about, responding to each individual student needs and reaching out to the teachers about the workload and really working with our students on time management. And so as a parent, as you mentioned, three children who respond to the work very differently. And it's really identifying and knowing their needs, putting a schedule together that really fits how they work, when they need to take breaks, when it's time to get back on to their assignments and away from their tablets or the media, and setting aside a quiet space whenever possible to allow the students to be able to engage in that work. And if it continues to be a challenge, it's really working with your school team, the teachers, counselors, school site administration, to make sure that we do whatever we can to support each individual child.
Thank you. Are those some of the strategies you're using at home as well?
Definitely. With each of our children, from our youngest to our oldest in kindergarten through 3rd grade, it's really about the structure. And so surprisingly, my youngest he can sit for the longest, which is surprising to us. But my oldest he needs breaks. He needs different forms of stimulus. He needs opportunities to transition to different things. And we know in school that those transitions and being able to differentiate and check in with students or move yourself closer in proximity is one of those things that are helpful for kids. And so how do we create those conditions within the home? How do we allow a student to take a break? And sometimes it just may be a brain break from the work and being able to allow them to do something that they enjoy with the expectation and the time of them going back to complete the work. And so for our older kids, it's really about that time management. It's difficult to be in front of your TikTok or in front of your media and knowing that you have to do a science project. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take a break and get on my social media a bit, but I never go back to the work. And how do we manage that time? It's okay with balancing, but making sure that we're getting the work done that we need to. And then also for us as a district to responding to the workload. Is that a lot for our kids? And if it is, how do we respond to make sure that we help them with that time management and then help them with completing the tasks that they're asked of them?
Yeah, I have received, every week I receive a few emails from parents and students, elementary, middle, and high school students, and I'm so impressed by their writing to me, but they do talk about that some of them feel they're getting more homework than they would if they were normally in school. And so I understand that teachers might feel pressure to give more work because they're not with them.
Sure.
And it takes longer online to assess how a student is doing, perhaps. You can't walk around and just check for understanding like you could in the classroom. So from a counseling point of view, if I'm a student who's feeling that I'm getting too much homework, that I can't keep up with the workload, or I'm a parent who sees that my child is struggling with it, what's the best approach for that?
It's really important to, and like last week we talked about, to have those conversations with our kids and our students and asking them those questions about the workload and how are they managing, and then really trying to identify where the challenges lie. And then working with the staff or the teachers to help get the support in those areas. As a school, that's really what we want to be able to do, is respond to the needs of each individual child and making sure that we're able to help provide strategies or support that allow them to be able to get the work done, but also that doesn't overwhelm them. So there may be some simple things with regards to taking breaks or breathing techniques or the way in which we process the information that we're receiving, so that way we don't overwhelm ourselves. But as a parent, if those needs are something that your student has, it's important that you can reach out to your school counselor, you can reach out to your school site administration, and they will connect the student and the parent to the resources that they need to help them through that time.
Thank you. You know, our high school students and their parents, too, are really worried about GPAs and as far as college admissions. SATs aren't occurring, and so to demonstrate your academic prowess, so to speak, your GPA needs to be high. And if I'm a high school student and I'm worried about college admissions, what should I do to assist and maybe to comfort myself or to comfort my student if I'm the parent?
For sure. And so our school site administration and school counselors have been really working closely or looking closely at what are the changes within college admissions and college requirements. Obviously, we know that those things are changing. And so as a parent and as a student, if you have those questions in relation to, concerns about, hey, am I progressing to where I need to be? I'm concerned about college. Our school counselors are there for those particular questions to make sure that kids are on track and making sure that they're easing that anxiety that they may have about being ready and prepared for college. Again, our responsibility as a district, as a school, is to make sure that we're helping our students progress to where they need to be, and really creating those opportunities that they have that are available for them, and helping them create them for themselves as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you again for joining us this week.
You're welcome.
We've also received questions about high school senior activities and graduations. We addressed this a little bit last week, but specifically for seniors who may be feeling like they are really missing out on their senior year. And I know a lot of our high schools are trying to do virtual activities to keep students engaged and connected. So I would encourage our high school students especially, but all of our students, to stay active with the social media pages from your particular site. You'll see a lot of things posted on ASB sites and such, because our schools want you to be connected and involved. It's a little bit different, but there's still a lot of fun activities out there. We don't know what it's going to look like in May, if we'll be able to hold graduations or not, the traditional type. It doesn't appear like it at this time, but that doesn't mean we'll stay that way. So I hope that we move out of the purple tier and into the red, and then keep moving down the colors so that we can get back together. But at this time, it's probably likely that we won't have a traditional prom, or that we'll have graduation in a large stadium with, crowds of people. So I hope it changes again. Once we enter our spring semester, we'll have a little bit of better feel of how things are going, and if we will definitely bring committees back together to see what we can do to provide fun activities and memorable ceremonies for our students. We definitely want to do that. We were specifically asked about a socially distanced prom, and again, we have to take into consideration all the guidance requirements that we're told to follow. So beyond the 6 feet of social distancing, right now our largest cohort can only be 16, and that's students and staff together. So we probably wouldn't be able to have like a prom in that sort of sense, but we may be able to have different types of activities at that point. Right now, if we have cohorts, they have to be stable, meaning we can't mix. So we couldn't bring groups together for a dance, even if people just danced by themselves far apart from each other. But we are going to keep our minds open and see what we can do to support our students and have some fun at the end of the school year, understanding that the seniors are missing out on a lot of traditional activities. In the future, we've received some questions about after-school programs, and so next week, Dr. Marie Pinto, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Pro Youth, will be here to discuss the day camps and after-school care that is occurring now and will occur when we're allowed to bring our students back to campus, what will be available. And also joining us next week will be Nathan Hernandez, our Chief Business Officer, and he'll be answering some questions about the district budget and Measure A. In the future, we'll have some more sessions. We'll talk more about college admissions and those types of things to help answer questions. So we will still open up questions to the public in our next sessions. So please, if you have questions or things you want to know more about, please let us know. Every Monday afternoon, we open up the Google form. You'll get an email again, and it stays open till 8 o'clock at night so that Tuesday we can determine who needs to be here with us on the panel, and then we can get those answers to you. So thank you, and that's all for today.